It's the time. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's global webinar on AI for Good, AI for All, hosted by the United Nations Internet Governance Forum Dynamic Coalition on Digital Economy. Artificial intelligence is transforming every aspect of our lives, from healthcare and education to governance, business, and sustainable development. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into our societies, it is essential that it benefits are shared equitably and that its development remains ethical, inclusive, and human centric. Today's discussion brings together distinguished global leaders to explore how AI can advance public goods, strengthen international cooperation, support the sustainable development goals, and ensure that no one is left behind in the digital age. It is my privilege to welcome all our speakers, participants, and attendees joining us from around the world. Thank you for taking the time to be the part of this important conversation. So let us now welcome our distinguished panelists who bring a wealth of global experience and insights for today's discussion. So first we have Dr. Rajendra Pratap Gupta. Dr. Rajendra is an AI researcher and architect of the Functional AI Pyramid AI Maturity Model Framework. He chairs the dynamic coalitions on digital economy, digital health, and the environment. He was appointed by the United Nations Secretary General to the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group of the Internet Governance Forum. He is also the co-chair of the Policy Network on Artificial Intelligence and has contributed to India's national health policy and national education policy. He's a former advisor to the Cabinet Minister of Government of India and is a chairman of the Digital First Foundation, Health Parliament, Academy of Digital Health Sciences, and International Patients Union. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Ms. K. Firth Butterfield, a former barrister at law and judge in England, who later became a US law professor. She became the world's first chief AI ethics officer in 2014. She has received the Time 100 Impact Award and was named to the Forbes 50 over 50 list in 2024. She sits on the boards, including the US Government Accountability Officer's Polaris Council, UNESCO's International Research Center on AI Advisory Board, and the Partnerships on AI Steering Committee. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have Mr. Eric Sutherland. He leads the OECD's work on digital health, health data governance, and AI in healthcare, and is responsible for evolving the OECD's recommendation on health data governance. He is the lead author of the OECD's newly released report, Scaling Artificial Intelligence in Health, and also the co-author of the OECD paper, Artificial Intelligence and the Health Workforce, Perspectives from Medical Associations on AI in Health. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Ms. Ashima Gupta, who is the Global Director and the global she founded and leads the healthcare vertical at the Global Cloud, driving strategy solutions and AI innovations across the healthcare industry. Before Google Cloud, she founded and led healthcare and interoperability initiatives at IG, advocating for open data and APIs to overcome healthcare data silos. And prior to that, she oversaw digital incubation at Kaiser Permanente. She holds 2 patents in computer applications, serves on the various boards, and was recognized as one of the most influential women in healthcare IT by HIMSS. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have Dr. Jude Kong. He is a research chair in community-oriented AI and mathematical modeling at the University of Toronto. He is the founding executive director of the Africa-Canada Artificial Intelligence and Data Innovation Consortium and founding executive director of the Global South Artificial Intelligence for Pandemic and Epidemic Preparedness and Response Network. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Ms. Christabel Rendolph. She is Associate Director at the Center for AI and Digital Policy, overseeing the US AI Law and Policy Group and coordinating CAIDP statements to congressional committees and federal agencies. She leads the CAIDP's effort with the FTC to establish AI guardrails. She is a licensed attorney before the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and holds an LLM in technology law and policy from the Georgetown University Law Center and a master's in law. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have Miss Ashna Ukal. She is a PhD student at Oxford's Big Data Institute, part of the HDRUK Turing Welcome PhD program in Health Data Science. Before Oxford, she worked as an epidemiologist at the Public Health Agency of Canada on COVID-19 surveillance and completed her bachelor's and master's at McGill University. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have Dr. Roman Estuco. He holds a PhD in political science and bachelor's and master's degree from the School of International Relations, St. Petersburg State University, with publications on institutionalizing of the G7, G20, and BRICS. He works in the Division for the Public Institutions and Digital Government, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, based in Geneva, and serves as the dynamic focal point for the IGF. Now, last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Marcus Kummer, who is the chairman of the Internet Governance Forum Support Association Executive Committee. He is a senior diplomat and one of the key individuals involved in the founding of the Internet Governance Forum. We are so fortunate to have you with us, sir, today. So without any further delay, I invite Dr. Rajendra Pratap Gupta, sir, to take the discussion forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akshita. Thank you, our expert panelists and those joining from across the world. I couldn't have asked for a better panel than this. Yes, I must say, you're very lucky, and thank you all for joining us. The last few weeks in Geneva have been like mind-boggling, from the AI for to good for AI for all. If you really look at, we had the global dialogue on AI governance, which was 6 to 7 July. We had AI for Good Global Summit, 7 to 10 July, which was hosted by ITU, and the WSIS Forum 2026, 6 to 10 July. And this has been, I think, a phenomenal boost to the dialogue and direction of AI for good. So we thought we will convene after all this happens and look at reflecting back and also looking at what the future looks like. With this, I would first want Marcus Cummers, the force behind Internet Governance Forum. We couldn't start anything without you, Marcus. So your opening remarks first.
Thank you, Rajendra, for your kind words, and hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to speak with you. Let me just say a few words to provide institutional context. This webinar is part of a series organized by the IGF Secretariat on behalf of the Dynamic Coalitions. And the Dynamic Coalitions are independent, bottom-up entities. They are an essential part of the IGF intersessional community. The IGF is not just a once-a-year meeting, but it is all year-round activities, and the intersessional activities, such as the DCs, the dynamic coalitions, as we call them, are an essential part of this community. They provide detailed and expert input into the deliberations of the IGF and provide substantive input into the overall program of the Internet Governance Forum. I don't want to be long here. It's just a few words to make sure that everybody who is not familiar with the dynamic coalitions understands their nature. They operate independently from the IGF, but they are recognized by the Internet Governance Forum. They are not UN entities as such, but they are under the broad umbrella of the UN as they operate. With that, back to you, Rajendra. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, for that organizational background and also the work that we do as dynamic coalitions. And now coming to you, Dr. Roman, you were there in the thick of all the meetings that happened in Geneva. Can you give us a download on what you saw, what you heard, and what's the future path?
Honorable Chair, distinguished panelists and participants, welcome to this webinar. We are very, very happy to see you here. We are glad that the work of the dynamic coalitions supported by the IGF is relevant, is in demand, and that on this Friday evening you preferred to be with us. It's very important. So yes, indeed, we have just held this very important high-level week in Geneva with 3 events happening almost in the same time in the same place, which was a Global AI Governance Dialogue, first time ever held by the UN with the traditional AI for Good Summit and WSIS Forum. So IGF was playing a big role in all these conferences. There was a side event where we were speaking in the dialogue, actually co-organized by Professor Rajendra. And there were also sessions held by the IGF with our booth, where all the community members were able to introduce themselves to the IGF and know about our plans for the upcoming annual forum. You all probably know that the annual forum will happen in Nairobi, Kenya, in December, from 14th to 18th of December. And we hope that it will be the good substantive conclusion of such a rich and fruitful year for the topic of AI, because as you probably all remember, there was an AI summit in India in February. Then these three high-level events last week. This week was marked by the high-level conference in China, in Shanghai. It is called World AI Conference, and as you probably know, it has concluded with establishment of the World AI Cooperation Organization, and I'm sure that we are still to explore what it will be all about. We need to say that one of the most prominent moments for the IGF community was presentation of the Dynamic Coalition on Environment report, called AI and Environment. Actually, one of a kind in the UN space on the topic, and it was also very much in line with the transparency initiative mentioned by the Secretary General of the United Nations. And as colleagues also just reported, this report has been presented in Shanghai as well during the session and World AI Conference. So we are glad that the work of dynamic coalitions is very well accepted by international community. We can't wait to see all of them in our annual forum, and we kindly invite all of you, dear participants, to join the work of the dynamic coalitions. We will now share the link in the chat, and you can choose one of 23 dynamic coalitions, which you can join right there on each dedicated page. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Rajendra.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. And now we move to the question and your views as expert panelists, as researchers, as leaders in this domain. So I'll first come to Ms. Kay Butterfield. What's your view on this topic, and how do you see AI for good, AI for all?
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And I thought that I would be provocative today on these two questions that you asked me. And I want to really sort of, because I'm going to be provocative, I just want to, set the scene a little bit. Obviously, I was the world's first AI ethics officer in 2014. So I have been pushing this governance rock up a mountain for a long time, and it's delightful to hear what's now going on around governance. But as Dr. Gupta said just a moment ago when we were having our pre-meeting, how good AI is really depends upon the right governance, the right approach to development of tools. And one of the things that I'm CEO of Good Tech Advisory, and I was headed AI at the World Economic Forum for a long time. And what I've seen is that where we go blindly or without good AI literacy into using AI, then we don't get great outcomes out of using AI. And so there are governance and literacy issues that we have to solve, I think, to get the great things out of AI. So with that caveat, you asked me, what good do you see AI bringing to humanity and society? And I think that, AI, where it can be specifically tasked to do something like medical research and do that medical research on specific journals, hugely helpful. AI can be great for humanity in terms of drug discovery and medical advances. But the caveat to that is, we know that there are biases in medical data. We know that persons of color and women are not well represented in medical data. And so when we are thinking about how we do good with AI, we need to deal with some of these data issues. And specifically, I think, we still have the 2.6 billion people who are not represented on the internet. And so, therefore, there is no data about them. And how we make this inclusive for everybody in the world is going to depend upon how we solve that problem, for example. But equally, there's a nonprofit called Fast Forward, which I expect you all know about, supporting AI startups in country. And that seems to me to be a great way to use AI for good because it's solving issues in country that are known to be needing to be solved. It's raised 1.4 billion, which I think leads us to the conclusion that we can't do this on the cheap. You need a lot of money in order to do good with AI. And then I think if we look at AI itself, we have to remind ourselves that actually, it's just a tool which acts upon us for good or ill in the hands of people. And so we have to remember that actually, whether we do good or bad with AI depends upon us. The machine itself, doesn't feel, it doesn't fear, it doesn't live or die, it doesn't care, love, think, understand. And it has human failure built into it because it's based on generative AI is based upon the way that on the data that we have collected. So I like to say that it's a mimic with a good memory and it's as imperfect as its developers and owners. So when we are seeking to do good with AI, we have to overcome those issues before we can do good. To succeed, I think we need to remember that humans need humans. And we make a grave mistake if we think that we can outsource achieving good with a machine and not thinking about the humans and the way that humans are actually asking what we are asking of the machine. And I think that we have to also look at the downsides. In politics, we're seeing that we no longer know whether something is true or false, fake or a lie. In the legal system, we are seeing that AI is upending the legal system with deep faked evidence, with hallucinations in court documents, and with clients uploading their documents and the other sides to LLMs, open LLMs, and all that undermines our human right to justice. But that's people, it's not the machines. So I go back to, in order to do good, in order for us to achieve our goals, it's about making sure that we teach people to use AI wisely. The other thing that I think is very interesting is that in education, we know we can use AI for good. But equally, I was at a talk just 2 days ago where a Shakespearean scholar said there is so much AI, there's so much content written by AI about Shakespeare now that it doesn't read any of the scholarship, the human scholarship, before it writes something. So we have to be aware of these problems in order to use AI for good. And then you asked me, how can we ensure AI reaches everyone and becomes a force for inclusive development? I think that if we overcome the problems that I've talked about, and we're all working on them, then I think that we can create harness AI for good across the globe. And so let me just talk about two or three things. First of all, I talked about the problems of AI and law, but actually we can use AI to digitalize documents, which actually enables people to get faster redress in legal systems. And that's huge. In many countries, the amount of time that you have to wait for redress it effectively denies us our right to justice. In healthcare, when I was at the forum, we worked with Rwanda to provide a chatbot to triage medical cases so that we knew who should go to the doctor and who should not go to the doctor. In a country where there is only one doctor for 27,000 people, that's hugely important, so long as it's properly governed. And also, I think, the ability of AI to do arduous and unsafe, dangerous jobs for us is a huge benefit that we can see around the world of robots taking over doing some of those jobs. But obviously with the caveat that those people who are displaced from those jobs have something else to do or a way to have income. And I think finally, when we're thinking about inclusivity, what we know is that around the world, populations are dropping, north, global south. And so we do need AI to actually take up the slack in our populations, because otherwise everybody's lifestyles are actually going to be affected. But in the end, I think AI is only as good as the humans who make the tools enable it to be.
Thank you, Ms. K. And I think you put the right thing, that the denominator is human being of what we do with it. And this brings me to Ashima, who is a global leader and a pioneer in this field. Ashima, a lot depends on what you say, and we are all ears.
Yes, sure. I'm an optimist for AI. First of all, thanks for having me here. Great comments. From where the lens that I see when we discuss AI, it's easy to focus on technology itself. The approach Google takes is both bold and responsible. Bold in our vision for reimagining the world, and being responsible at the same time. They are not one versus the other. They need to be in the lockstep. So the critical question is not that what AI is good or bad. It's the question is, what kind of society do we want AI to help us build? Humans are at the driving seat. It is going to be our generation, probably the next one. We are in one of the generational opportunity and at an inflection point. What kind of values AI would have? What problems are worth solving with AI, and what are problems that are worth for kind of humans to continue to own and solve? I think those are the decisions our generation and all of us on the table will have to take. For me, the profound opportunity that is right in front of us is AI's potential to expand human capability at an unprecedented scale. At Google, our mission always has been to connect both information and make it useful and accessible. I say information kind of pretty intently. But now, with AI, our goal is to make world's expertise and make it accessible to everyone. And as I look into this future, there are like three things. First is, how do you democratize expertise so that capabilities that are once reserved for just a few are available to all? Second is, we must ensure the intentional inclusion, that no one is left behind, the point the panelists before me made. And third, we must ground innovation in trust. Because I always say that health moves at the speed of trust, AI will move at the speed of trust. So let's look at what I mean by democratization. Um, at Google, our belief, especially as a healthcare leader, I believe AI is the most profound technology humanity is working on today. And I believe healthcare life sciences will be one of the breakthrough application of that technology. So I also compare that to arrival of, let's say, internet and mobile. So when technology goes through these shifts, I call them platform shifts, I call them generational shifts. So think back when internet came along. I know um, it is still not 8 billion people on the internet, but imagine what internet did to all of us to our daily lives, right? Google was the engine that connected them, people with information and each other. We daily serve billions of users worldwide. That was not possible a few decades ago. And then the world moved to mobile. We reimagined how we experience our life. Now, if you don't have your mobile with you, there's so much of that reimagination happens when the platform becomes accessible. I believe we are at the same moment with AI as the foundation models are becoming accessible, they are becoming faster, they're becoming more affordable. We will see the human creativity will come from the ecosystem. It is the application layer that gets built on top that will change how we experience AI in our daily lives, how we will experience AI in our professions. So, just case in point, in Google, 1 in 20 searches are healthcare related. What does that mean? That people are coming, that to me, that's access, right? Prior to that, prior to internet, prior to Google search, you really needed to know your doctor, your nurse friend, or to find the information. To me, that's the accessibility. And I see AI as a mean to expand access. We are seeing same with AI overviews. This is where we now see 1 billion daily AI overviews health related. 1 trillion views on YouTube on health related information. All that to say, there is a need for trusted, verifiable information by the people. I believe AI will be that equalizer, that force of democratization. So, and it's not just healthcare, cross sector. Imagine every teacher having an AI assistant that tailors lessons to each student's unique needs. Each student, you don't need to be in a certain economic strata to be able to afford a particular tutor, a particular college. I believe the world that is ahead of us is if we can get each kid, each student, no matter which part of the world you're in, access to the same expertise, then we would change lives. Similarly, now take finance sector. I uh, also have experiences. Many small sort of people have access to very good financial advice, wealth advice, because these are very, 0.11%. Imagine AI's ability to literate us on all these different sectors, be it education, be it life sciences, healthcare, finance. To me, that's the future I see. First time in my career, I can clearly see a near-term future where we have the tool where everyone everywhere can live a healthier life. It's not some places, some place. It's a not all students can get a better education, not some students in some places. So to me, that's the goal. And to me, the second one, the inclusion and scale is important. Inclusive future is not automatic. That's why I agree we need to be responsible and intentional in what we mean by inclusion. If AI only reaches the wealthiest nations, the largest enterprises, or those with advanced technical skills, we risk widening this digital divide instead of kind of closing it. And true progress requires intentional investment and massive planetary scale that like the two platforms before us, internet and mobile. They are planet scale technologies. And the measure of AI would be not the models we built, but the number of people whose lives become better because of them. I mentioned Uh, from Google perspective, when you look into YouTube, Maps, search, we have over 7+ products, and we serve 2 billion users now run on, they leverage Google on a day-to-day basis. To me, that access, that's inclusion. And then as we build new application layers, I mentioned the application layers when how people will reimagine AI native experiences. We need to make these tools available to developers. So today, like 1.3 developers are using Gemini. To me, all that is important, that this technology reaches everyone, every developer, every country. AI overviews, 200 countries, 40 plus different languages. To me, language access is also access, being able to have this model speak, understand, comprehend, respond in multiple different languages. That's again an inclusion. But all that, my third point is equally paramount is trust. AI will move at the speed of trust. So innovation gets us to the possibility. Trust will what will get us to scale. And AI must be secure, it must be private, transparent, grounded. We talked about the example of this bias in data. Can we help AI to actually help detect those biases? These biases exist for decades. They are structural biases. They will not go away overnight. But I believe now we have the best ally in AI to help us detect those biases at scale, help us address it, help us see them. To me, that's the kind of tool in front of us. Let's be clear, AI and responsibility are not competing priorities. They are complementary forces. We cannot achieve a true lasting societal scale without a solid foundation of safety, this transparency. So to me, both being bold and responsible is the path forward.
Thank you, Ashima. And I really like the way you put it, that if we democratize expertise, we democratize the opportunity. And what I like the best about you, uh, you maintain the sanctity of the platform by making it clear that unless it is planetary at scale, it's going to further the divide, which is great to hear you speaking at this forum. And now this brings me to another multilateral body, Eric. Eric has done phenomenal work through his reports that he has co-authored and his vision for data and AI. Eric, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. And I will say, both Kay and Ashma, you're going to hear a lot of the same things that both of them were saying. While I work at the OECD, well, obviously I came up with the first set of principles around AI back in 2019. Those were not specific to any sector. My work focuses on health. I'll try to talk about it more generically, but undoubtedly I'll get into aspects of health. But riffing off of what Ashma was saying at the very end of there, uh, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, and specifically in the health sector, although I think it applies in many other parts of this, there are actually three forces that I find that are trying to be fighting against each other, and we have to have an imperative around governance to find an and between these forces. There are the forces of the market that want to move fast. There are the forces of health that want to do no harm. And they're the forces of the public that want to make sure that we're reaching every person, that we're actually achieving equitable balance itself. And so collectively, we want to be able to scale to every person while moving fast and doing no harm. And that to me is the mantra of what we're trying to do from a health perspective, scale fast while we're doing no harm. And I think that that is one of the things that is particularly challenging in this space in order to achieve. Much of our approach, especially from the last 10, 20 years of digitalization, frankly, we put technology first. And by putting technology first, we massively underachieved what we could have done. Then certainly the reality was outstripped or underperformed the promise of the overall solutions is where I'm trying to go. And effectively, it's because what we did was we had asked technologists to implement technology, and they implemented technology without thinking about what the implications of the technology would be on the business processes that we actually have within our system. And this is where, riffing off of what Kay was saying up front, we really need to ground our approach for artificial intelligence in people who are making decisions, people who are impacted by it, people who are using these systems, people who are developing these systems. All of these things are people. Technology is not the problem. People are our challenge that we need to overcome if we want to achieve the potential of AI. Certainly from a health perspective, every aspect of people's lives. Data are the underpinning of modern health systems. AI uses that data in an effective way to find the precision solutions for individual care purposes and for community and public health purposes to really advance the overall society and community approaches to health. So there is undoubtedly we can improve our productivity, we can improve our precision from our diagnostics, we can improve our speed of a diagnosis and also reviewing our tests. We can improve the impact of our overall innovations we have from an individual perspective to a community level, and we can accelerate our ability to innovate with respect to some of our drug discoveries in that. Like certainly there's a case for some of our antibiotics, for example. It might take 2-3 years to develop a new antibiotic. We are now at a point, and certainly during COVID, we had the experience of developing an antibiotic within months. And undoubtedly, that is where AI saved truly millions of lives. And now we're at a point where we can actually reduce that time even further to weeks. But why? Because AI can eliminate the spurious cases and identify these are the most promising things to try, and thereby we can actually do things most effectively for the public good. Now, having said that, that talks about what we have the opportunity, and the opportunity space, certainly from a healthcare perspective, is massive. But the big question is, what do we need to do about it? While we can start to say we need to be worrying about people, really, I think of it in, first of all, a three-stage process. We need to shift mindset. Mindset is making sure that we're at a space where the use of AI is not a scary thing that, oh, I don't know if we want to be sure. We're at the point now where it is unethical to not use AI systems in the provision of some care services. AI outperforms doctors and nurses on a regular basis when used effectively by those doctors and nurses. So it is unethical for us not to be using them in those scenarios. But we need to make sure the second thing, the skill sets are in place to use those systems effectively. And then we worry about what tool sets we want to bring to the table. We don't start with the technology because that is frankly what we have been doing, and that has created massive amount of fragmentation. We start with a mindset, this is what we want to achieve, better health outcomes for people on an equitable basis, and then have the skills to actually do that. And then we worry about what are the right tool to bring to bear to solve the particular problem. Recently, we hosted a conference in Spain at the end of May, where brought experts together to say, well, how do we responsibly scale AI in health? And there were three major things that we heard from the people, because we recognized that there's a different mindset that we need to take when we're moving from experimentation of AI to scaling AI. And the first of those, and this is something we've already heard a lot about, is trust. AI will only scale at the speed of trust. Absolutely. It's like you're at the conference of Shema in terms of what we're doing, because literally that was what we talked about. And that is involving the public and involving providers and involving health systems to actually make sure we understand what they're doing, that we're are giving the people the skills, the AI literary skills they need to participate in this world. Having said that, one of the interesting nuances that came out of that is not just about giving AI literacy and increasing awareness, it's also about requiring the ability for people to interface effectively in a trusted way with these AI systems. So because the average person's reading level, for example, is that of a 10-year-old. So when we say we need to increase AI literacy, we can't expect that it's going to be beyond that of reading literacy. So how do we calibrate appropriately the reading literacy for the role that people have while we're actually interfacing the system? And I'm from the OECD, hence why I've got some numbers. So 35% of the public, on top of what Ashima was talking about, 35% of the public report using AI for health purposes prior to meeting a doctor, which really riffs off of many of the statistics you were talking about before. 35%. And that number, frankly, is not going to go down anytime soon. And the question thereby the health systems should be asking themselves, governments should be asking themselves is, what AI systems are the public using? Can we government trust that the advice that those AI systems are giving are advice that we would have given to the public from our public health authorities? It would be very easy to do algorithmic amplification with these AI systems where you amplify the AI slop that exists on the internet, which is frankly rampant. And so do we know if the AI slop is being amplified to the individuals using the system? Or do we know that the good quality AI systems, good quality information are being amplified to those individuals? That I think is one of the major risks that we have and major issues that we have to address with some urgency in our time. Anyway, that was a big bucket around trust. The second big bucket that I want to talk about is around the foundations, because how you actually implement AI system when you're experimenting with AI versus when you're scaling AI, you do different things. When you're building a skyscraper, this may seem like a weird analogy for me to go to, but when you're building a skyscraper, when you're thinking about urban planning, you don't, like, the builder of that skyscraper doesn't build their own water services, their own electricity, their own waste management services. They leverage the common services of the town because it lowers cost for the builder, and it increases the scale, the availability, the resilience of the overall system that the town provides. And thereby everybody is able to realize the economies of scale of the use of the common resources. The question is from an AI perspective, what is our analogy from urban planning to AI? What are those common services that we want to have in place that facilitate and ease the scale of solutions that have been validated for use, generally speaking, by the public? Because by using those common services, the idea of it is to be able to scale seamlessly and quickly to mass populations in a rapid basis. What we have done historically from the first wave of digitalization, we didn't define our foundations. And as a result, the foundations were really massively fragmented. Everybody built their own fragment, and then shock of shocks, we couldn't scale the fragments when we actually tried to put them together. Thereby, we can't actually use the world's data assets for public good today because we're often blocked because of law or legislation, or frankly, lack of interoperability. We are going to run into the same problem from an AI perspective if we do not define our foundations that enable and simplify the scale of solutions. The third major thing that came out of our work was really around we need to define the economic basis for this. The reality is billions have been pushed into AI in the last 10, 20, in the last certainly 5 years. And they've been built on business cases that pretty much were sunshine and rainbows. They did not have an economic foundation for the actual business cases to actually prove the promise of what AI would achieve. We need to really think about what is the economic basis for AI and how do we actually make sure that we're focusing on the things that allow us to achieve that type of economic return from both an economic perspective and a human basis in a way that is effective and safe. We need to do those two things at the same time and make sure, as we're worrying about from a safe perspective, and we heard this from Kay earlier on, certainly from an ethics perspective, where the value and benefit of AI can reach every person. I was talking with someone yesterday in Ontario, and they were trying to build a solution for economic triage. And how do we actually do this across the province? And it made simply the point that it is unethical to not scale the solutions across every hospital in the province, because the value of this is too strong, is too important to improve the quality of life for the practitioners and improve health outcomes for patients. But the reality is a lot of rural and remote areas don't have the technical expertise in order to be able to effectively integrate these solutions seamlessly into their facilities. We need to make it easier for them. We have an ethical imperative to simplify the deployment and scale of AI for the betterment of all. And that's where, by focusing on how to foster trust, which is around your mindset, how do we build our foundations, which is around your skill set, to make sure that we understand how we're doing it, and having the financial and economic foundation for all of this work on a go-forward basis. Back to you, Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, Eric. And it's always very insightful to discuss with you. And I remember our last call, and I really like the approach that you talk about in terms of AI governance, that there is a different scale and scope when you're experimenting, and there's a different scale and scope when you are scaling up. And as long as we know the difference, then the entire indices of how do you govern AI is a different shift altogether. And this brings me to Dr. Jude Kong. Dr. Jude, over to you. We are all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, and for organizing this dialogue after the amazing dialogue that we had in Geneva. And I would like to equally thank Mrs. K, Mrs. Gupta, as well as Mrs. Sunderland for the amazing continuing this conversation or the message that we all came up back with from Geneva, which is AI will only deliver meaningful global impact if it is developed and governed as a human-centered, inclusive, and accountable technology, one that will strengthen human capacity rather than replaces human intelligence. And if you listen to my colleagues earlier on, Mrs. K, Mrs. Gupta or Mrs. Sunderland, they all articulated strongly as to how we need to do this. I would look at it from case studies. I'm an implementer as well as community expert where I work with communities. And in order to look at how good the good that AI has brought to community, human and society, I would like to bring it from the work that I've done so far and answer the question from my work. I lead a network of 23 different countries and 27 different universities that work with government and communities. And the type of society that we found in Geneva was kind of the type of society that we work with. And for us to be able to build AI, to be able to solve problems in community, our initial premise was, if you take a community like the one that we selected people that grew up in communities that are far from the central system. And then we work with civil society to identify what their problems were. And then we figure out, how do you use AI as a catalyst to be able to augment the way communities solve their issues? And in my own community where I grew up, first of all, it was very difficult for a parent to be able to see a pediatrician. They will be able to see a nurse every month, even when they have birth. There will be a day in a month that they will carry the babies to go, and then a nurse will visit the village. And then they will listen to them. And most of the time, in between that, if there is any complication, they will either use traditional knowledge to be able to solve that problem with the baby. Now, that traditional knowledge have been very helpful. A lot of us exist today because of that. And as well as a lot of babies died that could survive. A lot of mothers died giving to birth. Witnessed a lot of people dying. And one of the tools that we built was almost very easy tool, but augmenting a simple issue. Can you leverage Frontiers AI and have parents in communities be able to get their questions answered rather than waiting till the end and then have kids die? And at this moment, within a short period, we solved that issue. In my village, people cannot do that. We look at a community like mine and said, in my community, to be able to see a doctor, you need to trek for like 4 hours before you had access to a family doctor. And most of the time, they are not there. At a particular moment, we have been able to build several point of care technologies that are connected to a center or to doctors out in bigger cities like Yaoundé in Cameroon and other cities. where if you sit in a village, you can be able to self-diagnose yourself, and then the result, somebody somewhere see it, and before you see it, somebody from the community health center is visiting your home because it's geolocated. With that alone, even though we're still figuring out how to get medication when we diagnose that, but that's helping a lot of people to be able to know what they're going through and be able to have access to a doctor directly. So when we look at what good do we see AI bringing into society, I see AI being able, point of need technologies being able to help a small community that is far from the central system. I see mothers and children that would have died surviving and living, giving life to those people. At the same time, when you look at such village, you realize that most of the time, one or two persons may survive and break through and go to university, like myself. Within my generation, my great uncles from a family of 5, I was the only one that survived to had gone to secondary school, university. But there are talented people that are more talented than I am. With this AI, I do see communities like that people being able to be educated. It must not be in the standard classroom, but be able to have access to education that they would otherwise not have, and be able to create tools that will solve problems in their communities. At the same time, it's very important that we have dialogues like the one we have in Geneva, where if we are thinking of those type of communities, what type of AI do we need to solve problems in those communities? I want to speak strongly to what my colleague, Professor Hinton, talked about. If we just embrace AI, and I think our colleagues here have spoken about it, if we just embrace AI without asking what type of AI, then we'll end up with an AI that will replace humanity. When Hinton talked about there's a 20% chance that AI may replace humanity in 20 years. And when I listened to that interview that Hinton gave Anderson Cooper in CNN, he talked of the only way we do that is by instilling maternal instinct. Maternal instinct, how do you instill those maternal instinct within the AI? He was asked the same question. He said, if you think of a mother and a child and you think of evolution, the only circumstance where you have something that's smarter, allowing the less smart ones to control it, is a mother and a child, where the mother is very smart, but allow the child to dictate to the mother, because evolution have allowed the mother to develop those instincts. And so, unless we develop this AI as a bridge, unless those developing the AI realize that you engage the communities and be able to instill the maternal instinct so that the AI is locally relevant to those communities, and that the AI serve human capacity, just like my colleagues have discussed here, and just like the case studies I brought in here, that AI will end up replacing the humanity in those communities. So dialogue like this one, continuing webinars like this one, bring us to that stage. In terms of education, yes, we speak strongly about this AI helping kids in such communities like mine, where I grew up. But there's a fear that AI does not generate new knowledge. But if we play, instead of AI helping kids to create knowledge, we end up with a society that will not be able to create knowledge if we don't bring in the humanities and teach them that connection that they need to connect. Teach them that, well, if you bring in an AI to be able to do your homework, to be able to summarize your article, you lose that creativity that you only create when you start writing things. But if this is not taught at the level of high school or even elementary school, coming to the university, then we lose that generation of kids that will be very creative. So it is very, very important that, yes, we used the AI to help communities like the one I grew up in, create proactive tools for them that will help them with education. At the same time, it is very dangerous in that the AI may replace them if maternal instincts are not embedded in them. At the same time, if we don't bring humanities and teach kids that connection, that love, then AI may end up replacing the creativity that we have within our society. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Jude. And it is very interesting and also intriguing for us to keep a watch on where will AI take us if we use it indiscriminately and if we carefully use it. And that's a very important point. And I'm sure this itself requires one complete discussion as a panel. And It needs a serious thought. I'm still making notes and trying to absorb all that you said. But this brings me to my next panelist, Ms. Christabel Randolph. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've really enjoyed hearing the remarks of all the esteemed panelists that have spoken before me. As I reflect on today's theme of AI for good and AI for all, I would like to first offer two further questions. Good for whom, and how do we ensure that? And I come to these questions not simply as someone who is working in global AI policy, but from the perspective of someone who is born and raised in South Asia and having worked across Asia and the Middle East. And I've seen, where the access to a doctor, teacher, bank, and public service is already unequal in many parts of the world. Many parts of the global majority countries are also still struggling with these access and equality issues. So AI can really widen that opportunity or deepen the exclusion. And in this respect, I echo the sentiments of the previous speakers of how AI is used and deployed. So we're already seeing AI-enabled diagnostics, for example, extending doctors' reach into rural clinics, some of the examples that were discussed before. In many African countries, we're seeing AI-assisted agricultural advisories helping smallholder farmers. Across Latin America and Southeast Asia, we're seeing how AI is being used to support multilingual education, helping to make public administration and public services more accessible. But when we are looking at these examples and we're looking at the landscape of how AI is being deployed and what we call the AI for good examples, we have to remember that technology does not automatically produce development. Where the system is trained on poor data, if it is deployed without human oversight, or inaccessible because of cost, connectivity, language, or disability, it will reproduce the same inequalities that it promises to solve. And when we think about this on a larger scale, zoom out from individual impacts to the more micro impacts on labor and livelihoods, we see that these benefits can either compound into shared prosperity or can really have the potential to have severe disruptions. For example, in India and Philippines, we're seeing how AI is reshaping a lot of business process outsourcing that affects millions of in the workforce. So if it's done well, yes, it can raise productivity. It can open opportunity in economies that have historically been left out from earlier technology waves. But done badly, it will compound many of the problems that we also discuss with regard to AI governance and AI policy, which is the concentration of wealth, resources, capacity in a handful of countries, in a handful of companies and firms, and with the potential to displace large swaths of the population, whether it's workers, disruption in economies, in accessibility. So when I come to this question or come to this reflection of AI for good, I strongly believe that we must approach this framing with a belief in the transformative potential of the technology, as well as with ensuring AI governance. Because we need the guardrails to build public trust. Without those guardrails, we really cannot ensure AI is serving good for who and how. At CIDP, we work globally to ensure that AI governance is grounded in democratic values, human rights, and rule of law. And I heard many people talking about, the discussions in Geneva, the Global AI Dialogue. We also had a panel on AI red lines to revisit AI systems and practices that do not serve the public interest. So what I would like to offer are three commitments. First is invest in local capacity, not only infrastructure and technical skills, but capacity for regulators, capacity for civil society, independent researchers, and public interest technologists. A prior panelist did speak about what do we really mean by AI literacy. It's a term that we hear a lot, but we need to look at the capacity that is required in different sectors and different contexts to ensure how AI is being developed, deployed, leveraged. Secondly, we need to move from principles to enforceable protections. The OECD AI principles, UNESCO's AI ethics, the Council of Europe's AI Convention have already laid strong foundations for AI governance. What we really need to do now is ensure implementation. I've seen a question in the chat, how do we set the incentives? So enforcing fairness, transparency, accountability, public safety, and reliability as essential governance pillars can set the incentives for AI development and deployment in the public interest. And last but not least, we have to assess AI for good by its distributional impact. Who receives the benefit? Who is bearing the risks or the costs of it? And how is infrastructure and talent capacity being shared? AI for all will not be achieved simply by relying on market participants or just ensuring that the same technology is distributed everywhere. It will be achieved, I believe, when every society has the capacity and the authority to determine how AI best serves its own people. I believe that is a shared endeavor. It's a shared work, and I'm happy to contribute to that discussion today and look forward to taking this work with all of you.
Thank you, Christopher. In fact, if I recall reading your profile, you worked in Bangladesh as well. And I was lucky enough to be invited by the Prime Minister of Bangladesh for the AI policy in 2019, which I helped this thing twice. And I think government has a big role to play as a convening power in making it happen. And whatever you said, and a very important point that AI can aggravate the problem it is to solve unless we have the right approach. Very well said. And this brings me to the last but the most important panelist, a student on this panel, a student of PhD. When I was chatting with Ashna last time, I said, how do you see the future when you're going to get into the job market or being a professional? So Ashna, you heard all of us. We are optimistic. We are cautiously optimistic on governance, on the rollout, on the beneficiaries, on the people connected to the internet and not connected. So how do you see the world shaping up for you and for people like you?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and thank you to all the panelists who went before me. I've been meticulously taking notes as you've been talking, and I'm super honored to be sharing a space with you. So thank you for the opportunity. Today I'm bringing the perspective, as Dr. Gupta said, of a PhD student in health data science, an academic kind of in the global health space, but also as a cynical young person to chat about kind of the opportunities and risks of AI, keeping in mind the two questions we were asked about AI for good and AI for all. And I'll start off with an example from my experience about the opportunities it could offer. And I think AI could really be used to promote data sovereignty and research equity. So what I mean by that, I work with absolutely brilliant teams for my PhD project based in Nigeria, Zambia, and Ethiopia. And each of these teams has an incredible wealth of health data, but often that data exists on paper in scarce and in various forms. But that's not to say it isn't good data. It's actually great data, I argue. And the fact that, most people now in those spaces have smartphones, it's very easy for someone to kind of go to their smartphone and say, I have a data set of 100 people. I'm trying to look at this outcome in my clinic, and these are the kinds of variables I have. How do I ask questions of my existing data? And this has really enabled teams to actually use what they have and produce really meaningful research from it, because we're still in a world where things, I think, are moving in the right direction in research, but still, especially for health research, 90% of health research still gets produced by 10% of the world. And I think AI can really help move that along to promote research in places where it is needed most. But I heard quite a few panelists kind of talk about scalability of AI and AI doing good for whom. And that's something I also wanted to reflect on. So I'll draw my example from tuberculosis, because that's something I used to research before my PhD. And tuberculosis was the world's deadliest disease in the early 1800s, and it still remains the world's deadliest disease. But we have had an effective treatment since the 1970s. The issue is that this effective treatment isn't where TB is, and that has meant that it is still killing millions of people where it shouldn't be. So scalability with AI is an opportunity to get AI in places where it could do the most good. But in order to do that, I argue that it should really be co-created, and something that Dr. Jude said, it should be designed and co-created with the communities that are going to use it for their own solutions. That's an incredibly important part, I think, of scalability and adoption. And kind of the final point I wanted to say, which is, I guess, not ending on a super high note. So I'm based in the UK, where I think we've had the hottest summer I've experienced. My family back home in Canada, and I know both Eric and Jude are in Toronto or near Toronto right now, and some of the worst air quality in the world has been there in the last few days. And I would be remiss not to point out the incredible environmental impact that data centers have. I read somewhere recently that Microsoft's carbon emissions increased 25% within the last year. And, this all sounds sort of very, very doom and gloom, and we're all kind of feeling the impact of climate change, and big data has a role to play, but I still don't think it's futile to try and change things. I still believe in the power of the people to demand corporate responsibility and accountability, and really find sustainable ways to support the kind of compute power that AI demands. Because again, it's usually communities that are already marginalized that feel the impacts of climate change. And so it's kind of our responsibility as people on the forefront of this development to always kind of keep them in mind, as well as we're developing AI solutions, to kind of do it in more and more sustainable ways, to ensure that, while we are trying to do good, we're not accidentally also doing harm. So I'll end with a sort of mediocre note there, but thank you again, and I'm learning a lot today.
All of us, Ashna, I think we're all learning. Before I go to the question queue from the participants, I have few questions. The way I'm going to ask the question. Anyone can raise the hand from the panelist and answer it. My first one is, will AI genuinely advance public goods? Anyone can raise the hand and answer it. Yeah.
I'll try and take a stab at this first. The answer is both yes and no. If we rely, as I said, only on private actors or market participants to deliver public goods, I think historically that has proven to be probably a bad policy choice and a bad idea. So what we really need to do is policymakers, oversight authorities, and the public to play a part in shaping how that public good looks like, what a public good means in India will not mean the same what it means in Brazil or what it means in America, for example. There are very different conceptions of it. So I think it has to be contextualized. I think policymakers and the public also need to determine what that public good looks like. I think Eric, I believe earlier on in the panel, mentioned that there's been disproportionate investment by the private sector with regard to AI and monetizing and commercializing it. And there is insufficient public investment with regard to whether you're talking about public compute, public infrastructure, public capacity to deliver the public goods. And that's a disparity that needs to be consciously thought of. I don't have an answer of how exactly the policy should be designed, but there needs to be a healthy mix and a healthy balance of both private and public investment capacity, and very importantly, public oversight.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, actually, I'll build on that. In many ways, the public sector are the stewards of public services, such as health and other such areas. and the private sector have the risk appetite and the resources to experiment. By bringing these two together, we're far more powerful, and explicitly by virtue of the public sector being stewards of government services. For example, in most countries around the world, that means that they're stewards of personally identifiable data. That can then be used by the private sector in innovation. And so it is important that we foster these partnerships back and forth. To answer the question, though, around the AI side, I don't think that AI itself is a global public good. But, and riffing off of what I was talking about before, I do think that fostering the foundations of AI could be a global public good, which is just to say, for example, the interoperability standards that allow the data to flow more easily. That to me feels like one of the strong areas where your data and digital infrastructures, they could become a public good. Like think of all the electricity wires we see when we're walking around. They are public goods because that is how we get electricity in our homes on a regular basis. The wider pipes under the ground, that's how we do it. These are the common services that are provided by government in order for us to be able to survive. In a modern age, the data and digital infrastructures could be similar global public goods that then allow both large and medium and small market innovators to innovate with AI, building on those common foundations.
Ashima?
I will add to that. I would say I genuinely believe AI can become one of the greatest public good technologies for our generation, especially when you talk about healthcare and life sciences. And it's not going to be automatic, as folks mentioned on the panel. I agree. It needs to be co-created with the people for whom you're going to build this technology for. But I'll leave you with one example that is near and dear to my heart. It is AlphaFold. And let me share the bigger. Well, AlphaFold won the Nobel Prize, the first AI to win the Nobel Prize, but it's an example that captures the essence of what lies ahead if AI is being used as a public good utility. So AlphaFold, so prior to AlphaFold, predicting a structure of a protein took any PhD level scientist anywhere from 3 to 4 years. It is a grand challenge for scientists. And with AlphaFold, not only the model was able to help predict the protein structure, our colleagues in Google DeepMind were able to open source the protein structure for 200 million proteins. Now, this is not behind closed doors, meaning instead of keeping that knowledge behind the closed doors, few researchers working on predicting the protein structure, it's out in the open, it's out in the public domain. And today, scientists are using them to accelerate drug discovery, understanding disease, engineering more sustained materials. You can pick any domain, we will see examples like that, where it will make it so that we can have research, we can have scientists solve the most pressing issues that lie ahead of us. The AlphaFold was predicting a protein structure is means to an end. What is the end? To understand the disease, to understand the cure, to create therapies. To me, that's AI at its best, not replacing human ingenuity, but human and AI working together. And it won't cure. AlphaFold is not going to cure disease on its own, but it gave millions of researchers. Now we have 2 million researchers worldwide who are using AlphaFold. 200 million protein structure. Now, if you just do the simple math, if one protein structure took 3 to 4 years, 200 million, it's like thousands of years of science progressed pretty fast. To me, that's the next decade will be of the compressed scientific discovery. If we continue to develop AI that expand access to knowledge, access to data sets, access to expertise, we will see breakthroughs like this emerge. Some we are seeing like AlphaFold. That's where the Nobel Prize come in, but some are yet to be imagined. And to me, that's where the public good conversation is very exciting for me.
Ashima, I think, yes, you're right. And even what we are seeing today, though we are saying AI has come of age, but we still scratch the surface of what AI can do. There's a long way to go. I think Dr. Jude Kong will take your response and then move to questions from the viewers who were
Thank you so
participating.
much. Eric answered this question greatly, and the previous panel equally answered greatly. And I wanted to go back to something that Eric had mentioned on data being public. And I have always conflicted on this, and it makes me wonder whether if you have AI technology, the way that it enables dynamic models, or it enables the function of dynamic models that automatically process information and then provide feedback or forecast based on the analysis and evolving data. What that means is that the data itself now is no longer separated from the AI itself. And I always wonder, when you build this AI model and the public use it in real time, and then the AI adapts itself and gets smarter because the public is using it. Do you own it, or do you move to a point where the public owns it? Is it a public good? And so, as we regulate this, I tend to argue strongly that there's no distinction between the AI and the data itself that's training that. And for that reason, there need to be conversation between the private industry designing this AI, the regulators, as to what component of it is a public good, just like the water we drink, and what component of it is not. Again, I do agree with Eric that the data itself is, but it becomes very difficult to distinguish the AI from the data itself, given that it continuously trains itself in real time.
Thank you, Dr. Jude. Now I'm trying to club two questions from the public and ask. Maybe we'll take two responses, then move to the next question. You try to answer as many. What are the key priorities that we must address over the next 2-3 years on global governance and cooperation for AI? So just first two hands that go up, I'll take that and then move to the next questions. Yeah, Ms. K. You're on mute.
I think that that governance is, if we don't have global governance, then companies need to have governance, and startups need to have governance. And so, because we don't have good global governance at the moment, and we don't have good laws in many countries, then what I'm seeing is companies are simply self-regulating because they don't want to see the bad effects coming against them in terms of brand, or in terms of someone suing them. And so I think that what we have to do is we have to help people around the world understand that governance is necessary. And that goes back to AI literacy, and literacy, to my mind, is ensuring that people understand that this is a machine, that this is a fallible machine, but it is something that we can use to make our lives better. And to Eric's point of people being mainly under 10, reading age being mainly under 10, the book that I published in January, we are actually looking at turning that into a musical, so that we address this literacy issue at a point where more people can actually have understanding.
So I don't know whether it was Juice first or Christabel, but I could see Christabel first. So for my thing, I'll put Christabel to answer that. And then Jude, I'll come to you next for the question, which is another important one.
Jude has had his hands raised before me, so Jude, please feel free to go.
Yeah, Jude, go ahead, yeah.
No, go ahead, Christabel, answer this and then I'll come later, if need be.
Very quickly, two things. When we talk about global governance, we also need to understand what we need to define it and scope it. What do we really mean by global governance? Because, for example, the UN or the OECD or UNESCO or any other international forum is really not going to come and implement the laws in each specific country. What these global multilateral bodies can do are provide a platform for convening, and much has already been accomplished. Probably not enough people know about it, and more people should know about it. There is, of course, the foundational OECD AI principles. There's the UNESCO recommendation. There's the Council of Europe AI Treaty, which is, ratified and endorsed now by more than 40 countries. What is really required now is for national governments to enforce and implement the principles that they have endorsed in these multilateral convenings and these multilateral forums. If your own government and your own country and your own regulators are not enforcing the laws and principles that they have committed to, global governance is not going to do anything different. Where global governance has two urgent priorities, and again, I don't mean to say that there's going to be a global supranational kind of body governing AI for everyone around the world. It's the convening power that I'm referring to. There are two priorities. One is really to agree on AI red lines. The UNESCO recommendations, for example, talk about prohibition on social scoring. There is a lot of discussion about using AI in lethal autonomous weapons and AI's ability to really increase lethality in situations of conflicts. So the global convenings really need to agree on those AI red lines. It's not a Western narrative or a Southern narrative or Northern narrative. We should be able to agree where we do not want to use AI. We do not want to use AI for surveillance. We do not want to use AI for social scoring. We do not want to use AI that will abdicate human responsibility and human oversight on the battlefield. Secondly, what global convenings are doing well is creating a shared body of evidence and knowledge. We are seeing it with the International Scientific Panel that has started out and provided its first report. We've seen the International AI Safety Reports that are trying to talk about the issues of measurement and evaluation and risk management with the advanced AI systems. That is that should continue to remain a priority for these global convenings, and that work should progress as well.
Dr. Jude.
I think she covered what I wanted to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're too kind. So we have a very interesting question. And since I'm going to open the question, I'm going to lose track on who is raising hands first, but I trust you that you will. So this question is from Sakshi Pandita. What initiatives can effectively bridge the knowledge and infrastructure gap so that small businesses and underprivileged groups can leverage AI for economic growth? A very important question in today's time. Yeah, Eric.
So I think in some ways what we've been talking about would help groups, like defining what is the environment in which to innovate. So that way AI solutions can be built and scaled and simplifying that work. If I riff off what Christabel was just saying, I agree to a certain extent that we need to take principles and governments need to interpret the principles for action. But I look at what groups like the European Commission are doing right now, where they're putting in another layer between principles and country action. Because if they want to scale not only within their country, but they want to be able to scale their innovations across country and leverage the innovations of others, then there needs to be some level of agreement across countries about what are some of the minimum baselines that need to exist in order for individual countries to be able to have the autonomy to for what they want to do within their country, but they are do it in a way where they're compatible with their neighbors. And I think if we're clear and transparent about what some of those minimum guidelines are, both at an international and national level, then I think we send a much more clear signal to the small market innovators and those who are trying to do just innovation for various communities in a much more safe and effective way where they can do their innovations with much more confidence than they can without that type of guidance. Because without that guidance, everybody's developing their own thing. And frankly, again, we have massive amounts of fragmentation.
Ashna?
Thank you. Just to add to what Eric said, I think governance is definitely needed, but also we can leverage. There's a lot of open source technology, and I think more and more, at least in sort of academic spaces and scientific spaces, the push towards open science is happening kind of alongside AI being developed. So I think for kind of individual users, for small businesses, for kind of smaller scale units, leveraging things that are open source kind of within these frameworks of governance can kind of enable scale up as well.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is ask you for your parting messages, key takeaways for this topic as something for us to consider as a continuous dialogue. So I will start with what I see on the screen first. So Dr. Jude Kong, you first.
Thank you. My message will be on taking a lot of frameworks that already exist in governance and bringing them, contextualizing them locally. There is a gap in the framework and translation, institutional translation. So just like question that a lot of government needs to be able to adopt what they have signed internationally, they need to be able to come up with ways of taking that and contextualizing them locally, which is very, very important.
Great.
I think you said, Eric. So I would say there is a lot of noise in the overall system. We've referenced before, there's lots of international organizations, think tanks, governments, tech players that are all saying what we should be doing with AI. And the problem is that collectively across everything, that is turning out as noise. Policymakers don't know who to follow. We need to work collectively together to develop a strong signal for what we need to be doing. So if we want to unleash the value of AI for everyone, we need to collectively agree on what that signal is and then help governments and policymakers and industry actually implement that signal.
Ms. Kate?
I think it's important that we think governance at every level. So not just wait for the world to come up with governance structures. With lethal autonomous weapons, we've been trying for a very long time, for example. But I go back to my AI literacy point, and I'll just give you a very quick example. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Fortunately, I'm totally better, but that involved going to medical oncologist. And my medical oncologist, when she found out what I did, said, well, why don't we create some AI that will walk you through your journey with cancer? And I said, why don't we create some AI that you can use in your back office, and you, the human, can walk me through my journey with cancer? And obviously that's a specific that I wanted. I wanted the human, but I think that it's an illustration of how there are things that we can do that the public will trust. And so we should go for the things that the public will trust and not necessarily say, oh, well, we know better. Because even for me, as an AI expert, I wanted the human in my care.
Thank you. Ashima?
I would say the panel has great comments all across. To me, as I reflect on the conversation, I come back to three things that give me both optimism and a sense of responsibility about this moment in AI. First is, as we all shared, the optimism about AI to really scale human expertise is the combination of AI plus human together. I'm often asked in conferences this question, is AI going to replace doctors? And the answer that not just me, many people leading this will give a doctor who uses AI will be replaced by a doctor who doesn't use AI. Now, replace that with any other profession. My point being, each one of us in our daily job will find ways to leverage this powerful tool. And if you are too afraid, you're not too well versed, that goes back to literacy. We need to bring people along and show them about literacy, because the future of AI will depend upon that trust, that responsibility, and that partnership. And it will only deliver on this promise if we have people who are embracing it, who understand their day-to-day jobs. I also say there's in any job there's a the boring, repeatable chore of a job, and there is a purpose of the job. The opportunity in front of us is, can we elevate that meaning? Can we make that purpose central to our day-to-day work while the chore is being handled by AI? And finally, on the governance side, many of the panelists were spot on. To me, it's too important a technology to not be governed. It's too important to not have a global framework for this. It doesn't need global control. We want different nations, different global geopolitical political priorities, but we do need a global framework for that. And I do believe not everything would require that level of rigor. So if you're creating a chatbot and creating a marketing content or writing an email, you don't need the same level of governance for each use cases, but they are incredibly important societal issues in front of us that will require the global coordination, the global framework. It's too important not to. And I believe the answers will come from all of us. This is, like it or not, AI is already here. What we do next will determine the course, not just for us, but for generations to come. I believe in human potential and human ingenuity to get it right.
Thank you. Christabel?
Two concluding reflections. First, I would like to remind everyone, because we are at a dialogue of the Internet Governance Forum talking about governance globally, what has been accomplished. The Universal Guidelines for AI was in 2018. The OECD AI principles were in 2019, before chatbots were a buzzword and before ChatGPT broke onto the scene. And they were updated in 2024. We have the UNESCO recommendation that was endorsed by 193 countries. We have the Council of Europe AI Treaty, again, ratified by more than 40 countries. And we now have, at CIDP, we track 90 countries that have active AI policies and strategies. So I would like to urge everyone to recognize, in terms of policy and governance, the accomplishment that what we have already collectively achieved in terms of baseline guardrails. Where we really need to move forward and do better is in terms of implementation, in terms of setting the right incentives to ensure not just governance, but also to ensure that the innovation, the capacity for innovation is also something that we can all participate in. And the second thought that I would like to offer is that innovation and governance are not contradictory. We see some of the most important, some of the most significant discoveries and scientific breakthroughs coming in sectors that have been able to scale, that have been able to innovate with great baseline governance guardrails. So we really need to come out. Eric was talking about, separating signal from noise. The signal really is that there is no contradiction. We understand that technology is moving fast. We understand that technology is transformative. We need to be comfortable with that uncertainty. We need to understand that innovation and governance go hand in hand. And we need to implement the baseline guardrails that we've already all agreed on.
Thank you. Asha?
Thank you. Despite my doom and gloom comments before, I am an optimist. I think AI has strong potential, particularly in the field of health. But to reflect on today's discussion, I also think, like with any other technology, we have to ensure that sort of governance and policy frameworks or general decisions aren't being made by a small group for a very large group. AI for all is something everybody wants, but all is a very, very big number at the end of the day. So it's important for us to make sure as many voices are heard as possible. And I saw something in the comments that I'd like to highlight as well, is that we should make active efforts to ensure that AI consumers are also contributors. And we are learning from the end users, like with any good software development pipeline, you learn from your end users the most. So it's something to keep in mind as AI continues to develop at breakneck speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashna. I think everyone today would have been enriched by the dialogue, the depth, and the breadth both. I think for me personally, it is very important. And since I think you talked about the involvement of all stakeholders, so I'm not sure how many of you know, Internet Governance Forum is a multilateral body, but a multi-stakeholder, in its form and spirit. So rightly, it has the right, I would say, positioning within the multilateral system to be on the side of the governance or developing the governance, picking up the best practices. And as the co-chair of the Policy Network on AI, I look forward to engaging with you along with others and when we pick up our work. But I think if I sum up, the discussion is AI will be good if it is AI for all. That is one. And I think I have to first lastly thank my wonderful team at the Internet Governance Forum Secretariat, Harman, Anya, uh, Roman, Marcus, and of course my team who have worked hard to get all of us together, Dr. Manpreet, Ambika, Palak, Akshita, Debosmita, and others. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking out time and sharing your wisdom. I am sure it's going to go a long way in our work further at IGF, and I'll keep you all posted and probably engage with you all. Thank you so much and have a great time ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.